settlement on her behalf paid by the district. The bill before this committee is an open invitation for these same types of legal problems in our public K through 12 schools. SB 48 uses terminology which is vague and confusing. It prohibits instruction and instructional materials that promote a discriminatory bias or reflect adversely upon persons belonging to a protected class. A reasonable instructor would not know whether his or her instruction is reflecting adversely or promoting a discriminatory bias. SB 48 is broad in scope and suffers from imprecise terms, as the Supreme Court has found in Gentile versus State Bar of Nevada. Restrictions on speech which have sanctions are legally suspect when terms have no settled usage or tradition of interpretation in law. Under this inartfully drafted bill, a teacher would have no principle for determining when his remarks pass from the permissible to the forbidden. Further, a school board would not know when proposed instructional materials promote a discriminatory bias or reflect adversely upon persons belonging to a protected class. In conclusion, in vetoing a similar proposal, Governor Schwarzenegger found that the language is extremely vague and potentially confusing. This bill has not improved on this situation at all. Because the bill does not use terms with meanings developed in the law, I would urge the members to reject this bill. It will lead to litigation. I assure you, and litigation has already started, and there's been several cases already litigated, very expensive. Thank you for your attention to this matter and for your service to the community.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, Ben Lopez from Traditional Values Coalition, representing 44,000 churches nationwide, 8,300 in the state of California, various faiths and denominations. I would like to stress to you as a committee that despite what you are being told and the stories that have been mentioned earlier, this bill is not a bullying bill. It is not an anti-discrimination bill. There are other provisions of law that have already addressed the issues that the witnesses and the author have brought up at this hearing and a prior hearing. In 1999, AB 537 was signed into law, SB 777 in 2007, and it amended Ed Code 220, which states, and this is still law, that no person shall be subject to discrimination on the basis of the two categories in this bill are in current law, gender and sexual orientation, and it also lists the definition that is set in the Penal Code 4222.5, which deals with hate crimes. Further, another bill addresses these very same issues of bullying and discrimination, therefore no need for this bill. That is AB 1785 by then Assemblyman, now Mayor Villaraigosa in 2000. And it says, the current education code, they adopt policies directed toward creating a school environment in kindergarten and grades 1 through 12 that is free from discriminatory attitudes and practices and acts of hate violence. Further, the same section, state curriculum frameworks and guidelines, moral and civic education curriculum are to include the aim of fostering an appreciation of the diversity of California's population and discouraging the development of discriminatory attitudes and practices. Further, same bill in 2000, different section of the code. It is also the intent of the legislature that public schools have access to supplemental resources and materials to combat bias on the basis of gender and sexual orientation. SB 777, section Ed Code 51500, no teacher shall give instruction, nor shall a school district sponsor any activity that promotes a discriminatory bias because of a characteristic listed in 220, which includes gender and sexual orientation. Also, I've been here in this building for 12 years now, and I've heard the arguments many times that these bills are needed to address bullying, to protect students who are wrongly accused of whether the actual or perceived sexuality. And I will agree with that it is wrongly accused, but the bills that were signed into law, including the Harvey Milk bill last year, That was the justification for those bills. Those bills were to alleviate the problem. We needed those bills at that time to address these issues. I would say let the current laws on the books run its course, enforce the laws, don't add laws that don't address these particular issues. SB 48 itself deals with textbooks and instructional materials. And because of the term reflects adversely, it not being defined, there was a comment made by another witness that we'd hope the opposition wouldn't malign their side. Well, likewise, we would hope that this law would not malign anybody of a conservative, moral, religious belief and object to the lifestyles that are mentioned in the bill. What is to happen with those set of people? Also, the term reflect adversely is not defined, and we're talking about in social sciences, and the issue of European Americans or Europeans in general are listed in those categories. What are we to do then, because reflect adversely is not defined, what are we to do then with the Germans in World War II, the Japanese in World War II? You see the slippery slope here without having that term defined. Anybody can accuse someone of saying, you have negatively reflected upon this particular group, therefore we can bring litigation, therefore you're in violation of the law. Teachers will not have any consistency as to what is permissible and what is not permissible. Another point, this bill, regardless of what may be stated, has financial impacts to it. And there's argument that the bill will be brought up at the time that curriculum is adopted. But bear in mind, the textbook industry opposed SB 777 at the time, and Sheila Kuehl took out the textbook mandate because it would cost the textbook industry to incur a higher cost to produce basically a special edition of textbooks for California schools that they couldn't shop around to the rest of the state. That's going to be passed on to us as taxpayers. For these and a whole variety of other reasons, we respectfully request a no vote.
Thank you. Next witness.
Dear Honorable Senators, I'm Sarah Yang, and I speak to you on behalf of PFOX, Parents and Friends of Ex-Gays and Gays, an organization of families and friends of the ex-gay community. I'm a California native and a proud graduate at UC Berkeley. I also spent 19 years of my life living as a man. My first words are, I'm a boy. If anyone was born this way, it was me. I thought I had no choice but to get surgery or continue dating women as a man trapped in a girl's body. I became suicidal not because of lack of understanding from others, but because I personally didn't want to live this way and no one offered me any other choice. That led to hopelessness and depression because of the belief that I can never change. But 13 years later, I now totally embrace and accept myself for who I really am, a heterosexual woman. I'm even marrying the love of my life, a man named Matt, this September. I don't want students to go through the same hopelessness I did. Ex-gay organizations offer valuable support to those with unwanted homosexual feelings. I wouldn't be the happy and fulfilled person I am today without such support. With the assistance of the National Education Association's Ex-Gay Educational Caucus, PFOX distributes brochures to public school students to inform them that if they're struggling with unwanted homosexual feelings, they can seek change from those feelings. In fact, there are thousands like me who have chosen that very path. Since SB 48 adds protections for LGBT persons in textbooks and restricts any classroom instruction that could reflect adversely or be considered to pose a discriminatory bias in those materials, this bill will censor speech regarding the ex-gay community, which experiences intense discrimination by the very group of individuals which they have formerly identified with as an LGBT person. For example, the California computer company Apple removed an ex-gay app from its iServices just last week because the LGBT community deemed this information to be offensive to LGBT persons. I therefore ask that ex-gays like myself be added as an itemized group to Section 51204.5 and 60040 of this bill to ensure that ex-gay instructional materials and famous ex-gay individuals not be censored because others may deem them to reflect adversely against LGBT individuals. We must ensure respect and diversity for all, and that includes ex-gays like myself. I therefore submit this email from Kevin Jennings, founder of GLSEN and the current Safe and Drug-Free Schools Director at the U.S. Department of Education. In his meeting with PFOX, Secretary Jennings assured PFOX that the federal government will protect harassment of ex-gays in educational settings. We ask nothing different from the California legislature. Therefore, before this legislation is approved, we want clarity on this question. Will ex-gay discussions be considered to reflect adversely upon LGBT persons in California schools? Thank you. And here are the letters that I would like to submit.
Thank you. Could you give them to the sergeants behind you? And congratulations on your upcoming marriage.
Thank
and
I'm very excited.
Those of you that have completed your testimony, if you could leave the seats and let others come and take them, I'd appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Good evening, members. I forget what time it is. I've been here since the morning. My name is Paulo Silva. I'm the legislative director, for, then you understand, for Capital Resource Institute, and I'm here to testify against SB 48. First and foremost, before I get on with my testimony, I would like to tell Michael's mom, I'm really sorry for the loss of your son. No mother should have to bury her child, and that truly is a heartfelt sorry. I'd like to address the issues of studies that were quoted in this committee and previous committees that say where the LGBT community is represented in the history books or social and sciences, that they see a decrease in bullying, simply because there may be a correlation between the decrease of bullying and the inclusion of these programs in the schools. It does not necessarily mean causation. And anyone who studies you know, when something is implemented, you always have to take into account a correlation does not mean causation. So with that stated, this bill is being put before you as a bill that has to do with bullying, yet nowhere in the bill is the word bully included. As I stated before the previous committee that heard this, bullying should be taken care of on a one-on-one basis. Individuals who bully others usually do so out of insecurity, usually do so because they feel they must feel more powerful and superior to those that they bully. Teachers should handle it on a one-on-one basis. Students who are being bullied should go before the teachers and ask for intervention. And we don't need SB 48. As a matter of fact, I don't think SB 48 will alleviate the problems, as was so eloquently stated by another of my colleagues that stood here before you, and several laws already preventing bullying and discrimination. Furthermore, when it comes to the accurate teaching of history, I've got a few examples that I'd like to put before you. When it comes to nationalism, Nazi Germany was because of nationalism. Are we then going to have to, excuse my language, but kind of censor history in World War II and what happened in Nazi Germany? Because that was nationalism. Or how about the Hutu versus the Tutsi, and this happened in Rwanda? This was an ethnic problem, ethnic war. Are we going to have to censor that piece of history simply because it will adversely affect or talk adversely about a particular ethnic group? Or 9/11, whether we like to admit it or not, yes, not all Muslims are terrorists, but the terrorists who attacked our nation claimed to be Muslims. Sure, I accept the fact that they're radical Muslims. Are we going to then have to alter 9/11 and what happened, the 3,000 people that died in September 11th simply because of SB 48? The truth is the truth, and we shouldn't have to necessarily censor the truth because it stands on its own. So for those reasons, I ask you to vote no on SB 48. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness, over here. Sir.
Yes. My name is Gary Fanger. I'm a parent from Alameda. I have 4 children in the Alameda Unified School District. About a year and a half ago, the school district was presented with an LGBT curriculum. They adopted that curriculum. It caused a media circus. There was people from the outside coming in, speaking for the curriculum. Parents were rallying against it. There was a lawsuit that was filed. The community was divided. It was a situation that caused a lot of stress, I think, on students, especially high school students. They felt divided in the high schools. It was a situation that caused a particular parcel tax to be defeated. Parents felt they needed to send a message to the school district. Another lawsuit is being ensued. I have a daughter that's in kindergarten. She is being taught about 2 gay penguins in Central Park that could not have an egg. And so they raise this egg themselves. It's a progressive situation that each year they get a little bit more information, and some of this information is confusing. My daughter, who's 10 years old in 5th grade, she came home last night. She was given a survey about questions that were contrary to her religious beliefs, and she was confused about it and having difficulty with it. I have a daughter in high school. She can understand some of these things, and she can certainly make a decision as to what's, right and what's wrong. But when you start at the age of 5 and 6 and start teaching these children about gender preferences, what you're doing is you're confusing them. And my children in school, have certain beliefs that they've been taught at home, and here we have the schools teaching something that's contrary to that. In Alameda, it woke up a giant. Parents who never were involved politically. I very rarely have ever gotten involved in politically. I'm here speaking to you today as a parent, as somebody that's concerned about my children, concerned about my rights to be able to teach my children the morality that I think is right. I respect other parents and what they teach their children, but this is going too far. This is not about children. This is not about anti-bullying. This isn't about an agenda, a political agenda that they're pushing through the schools. And if this bill is passed, or if it goes through, you're going to wake up the dragon. This community, parent community, that is opposed to this because of religious, very deep feelings, they are going to do everything they can legally to stop it from happening. We are going to protect our children, and I pray and hope that you'll vote no on this particular bill. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'm just keeping an eye on the time. We've got 10 more minutes left, and I think 6, 7, 8 more witnesses. Other witnesses? 9? Okay. So to be respectful of other people's time, I'd appreciate it if you could keep it as brief as possible. Go ahead, sir. You're next in the blue shirt. Yeah.
Okay. My name is Michael McDermott. I am an advocate on behalf of the civil rights of this nation's despised and disposable male minority, and an activist against misandry, the hatred of men, masculinity, and normal heterosexuality inherent in SB 48. And I think if you want to see a clear example of misandry, all you need to do is look at the previous testimony from the woman who said she feared her son was in danger of becoming a, quote, straight white male, end quote. How horrible. Racism, sexism, and the slur against non-homo anal males that they are rigidly linear, unbending, and narrow, as in straight. You can be a happy Greek or a gay lesbian, or you can be a straight white male hated for that. I note that this bill is simply an Orwellian thought police scam to bait and switch by bullies to enforce their bullying of others. For instance, the Mount Tamalpais scandal, where the women at Mount Tamalpais associated with the Homosex Alliance who faked hate crimes in order to gain power and intimidate others in school, is an example of how this bill is going to be used to bully others in school. I note that we had the California Commission on the Status of Women here to support it. There is no commission on the status of men in California. It is a governmentally punishable offense to even recommend the establishment of a commission for men. That is the double standard we work with. I note in San Francisco we have the annual San Francisco Dyke March anti-male hate riot, subsidized by the city of San Francisco, that bans male citizens from the public street as an act of their kind of tolerance.
Okay, I need you to address the issue of the bill, and we are getting close to out of time, so if you could
Then I'll close up by saying that
you.
This thought policing bill will not prevent fair and accurate presentation of information to the schools. I use the example of the founder of the Nazi Party, the boy-raping, homo-anal, ephebophile
Again, I need you to wrap it up.
who will be censored
Sir.
from your textbooks, even though you claim it's about fairness.
Thank you for your testimony. Yes, ma'am. And again, I need the witnesses who have completed their testimony to leave the seats and allow others to come up. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Honorable Senators and Chair Evans, thank you for your consideration of my testimony today. My name is Elizabeth Swanson, and I'm the parent of 2 teenage children. Out of concern for kids and future generations, both gay-identified and straight-identified, and kids in same-sex parents' homes, I share with you my deep concerns with this proposed legislation and intentional agenda to sexualize children, which Mr. Leno seemed to deny last week when questioned by Senator Huff. Senator Leno replied, an agenda? This bill is just about adding LGBT historical figures into textbooks, he said. What's the harm to children with an agenda that conceals truth, fabricates lies, and prevents children from hearing known unhealthy facts about an LGBT lifestyle? Or what about the effects on parents' rights and religious freedoms, which will be further eroded in our schools should this legislation pass? Innocent and trusting youth will be misled into believing lies and be barred from learning medical and scientific facts about the high risks associated with the homosexual identity. They will be taught that their parents are haters and bigots if they disagree with the school's teaching, promoting homosexuality in only positive light. This legislation, as has been heard, adds lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender persons to protected classes in sections 51, 500, and 644, which would prevent any teaching materials which might be considered to reflect adversely or present a discriminatory bias against LGBT persons. For the first time, a group of individuals whose identity is defined only by actions, sexual actions, will be added to the list of protected classes with this bill. As psychiatrist Dr. Miriam Grossman pointed out last week in the education hearing, gender identity disorder, or transgender, as it is commonly referred to, is still a medical diagnosis within the American Psychiatrics, Diagnostics, and Statistics Manual.
I'm going to need you to wrap it up.
I'm sorry, this is really important.
I understand, but I have 7 or 8 more witnesses in 5 minutes.
Okay.
So I really need you to wrap it up, and I'm going to have to, unfortunately, ask the other witnesses to be very brief, because we've got to allow everybody to testify.
I respectfully say, Senator Evans, that I am represented by Mr. Leno, and when I have contacted his office to share my viewpoints, his office has told me that they don't want to hear what I have to share.
Well, I'm interested in hearing it, but have you submitted a letter?
I tried preparing a letter and sending it to you, and I just couldn't put it all down in writing.
Okay,
I was working on this.
There are many different ways of communicating with us: letters, emails, faxes, phone calls, and others. And I've received a whole file full of letters, both in support and opposition. So I want people to understand this is not your only opportunity to weigh in.
Okay,
but I do, out of respect for all of the public as well as the committee members who have been here since very early this morning,
I'll share my information.
Need you to wrap up.
Thank you very much.
And if you could submit the rest of your comments in writing, I would very much appreciate it.
Okay. Let me just share here, please. My specific question is, this bill has no provision that exempts health instruction from this bill. In terms of strategic agenda, I want to introduce this book titled Queering Elementary Education that is endorsed by Kevin Jennings, who's now Safe and Drug-Free School Czar. In terms of instruction for textbooks that this bill actually has, this book titled After the Ball by Kirk and
I see that you have 3 books there as well as other papers. If you have exhibits that you would like to submit to the committee, would you please give them to the sergeants that are right behind you, and they will bring them to us. And I am going to have to move on to the next witness.
I'm sorry. You obviously, the information that I'm sharing is extremely important, and as a parent, that's all that I am.
Yes, ma'am, I appreciate it. And I have a lot of other people. Please don't make me have the sergeants remove you from the room. I have been very accommodating, and I now have 3 minutes left because you've been arguing with me and not allowing me to run the committee in the way that I intend to run the committee. So if you will please give the sergeant your materials and exit the Diaz, I would very much appreciate it. Otherwise, I will have to have you removed. So thank you very much for your testimony. And the next witness, please. And the remaining witnesses, I apologize, but I have 3 minutes left for you. I have been very accommodating for both sides, and I'm trying to be fair to everybody. So I am now going to have to ask you to identify your name, your affiliation, and simply reflect the fact that you oppose the bill.
Yolanda Canuck with Concerned Women for America. We have over 37,000 members in California, and we strongly oppose the bill.
Thank you.
I'm Linda Turner, and I'm here on behalf of my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren, and I'm in total opposition to SB 48.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate your accommodation. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Lauren Yancey. I'm here representing the California Federation of Republican Women, and we urge you to oppose this bill.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'm David Curtis. I'm a member of the Executive Committee of the Protect Kids Foundation and a father of 3 who have gone through the public school system. And on my personal behalf and on behalf of our nonprofit foundation, we strongly oppose this legislation.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman and honorable members of the committee, I'm Bill May with Catholics for the Common Good. We oppose the bill because it's vague and it really doesn't deal with the roots of bullying, which is a serious issue that extends way beyond gays and lesbians. And it really focuses on the need for empathy and the need for respect for people, whether or not you agree with their religion or their culture or anything about them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ned DeLessie for the California Catholic Conference. I'll just try and make it real quick because a lot of the points have already been made. Just ask that the committee take some time and ask Mr. Leno, operating on his, very positive instincts here, to take some time to really think this through. And certainly human pain and human tragedy deserve the response. This legislature has spent enormous amounts of time trying to deal with those in a responsible way. And we have yet to review whether or not they're working or not. And now we're moving on to talk about curriculum. And we've already moved on the curriculum in a variety of ways, yet we've never done any systematic review of this. And so I'd ask you to just take your time on this a little slowly. Review the current laws, see what's happening. The challenge to vagueness is a very serious one that we really need to take a look at. And I would highlight for you the fact that the vagueness, extends legally, as you've heard in the earlier testimony. But also, we have the potential here to move from honoring a characteristic to not honoring the accomplishment that the characteristic might be related to. And I think we have to be very clear and precise in the language that we're using here in order not to get people lost in a whole bunch of other issues that are probably not germane. And lastly, I think to explore the relationship between what the state body does here and the local school district in terms of, the fact the state and the local school district operate in local parentis. So how do we balance the choice of curriculum along those particular lines? So I think there's just a need to slow down a little bit, think about this. Let's do some intelligent and thoughtful planning together in order to figure out the best way to maintain e pluribus unum, that we're all one.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I agree. Marilyn Jackson, Concerned Parents United. And although we are certainly for the rights of students to be protected against bullying, at the same time, parents are at risk in terms of not being able to opt their kids out, and there are many parents that do not agree with a homosexual lifestyle, and their rights are being compromised and all of this. There's no opt-out provision here, and it's not fair to parents of a religious persuasion that don't agree with the homosexual lifestyle to have their kids instructed in this manner. So we urge you to vote against it. Thank you.
Any other witnesses who have not yet spoken against the bill? All right. Any questions or comments from the committee members? Seeing none, Mr. Leno, well, before you close, I actually want to make a couple of comments. Just very briefly, first of all, thank you to everybody for your cooperation. I really do appreciate it, and I think that it was a very good and productive debate and discussion. And I actually just want to mention, I think I had a whole list of comments I wanted to make, but really what one of the early witnesses said got to me, which was, where was my history when I needed it? And as a woman of a certain age, I can remember when girls were not supposed to be doing anything other than being mothers in the home, which I have been and believe it is a worthy thing. But the other options for us in terms of careers were to be nurse or secretary. And I was born with a thirst for justice, and I wanted to be a lawyer. But I was told early on I couldn't be a lawyer because I wasn't a man. My youth was spent during times before Title X, Title IX, Women and Gender Studies, etc. And I remember reading our textbooks, which at that point were written in the male gender exclusively, as if women had nothing to do with our state or our country's history. And for the first time when I was in college, I read some very famous quotes that were written in the female gender. And suddenly it opened up everything to me. It just completely changed my understanding of history, my understanding of who I was and what my place and my role in society was. So, I think many of us have been in that position where we're written out of history books, we're written out of textbooks. Our gender contribution or our identification contribution has not been recognized. There's another element that is being represented here or presented here, and that is one of bullying. And we know that that is an endemic problem on our campuses throughout the nation, and it has led to more than one suicide and more than one loss in other ways. So the best way to combat bullying is understanding, education, and tolerance. And so for all of those reasons, I will support your bill, and I appreciate the fact that you brought it forward. I understand the issues that were raised in opposition, and as a parent, I can sympathize with the threat that is in front of you when your child is being presented with something you may disagree with or you don't like. And it is confusing, and it's difficult to understand how to deal with it. But in my opinion, the more we tolerate, the more we understand, the more we accept of our human beings, all of whom are flawed in one way or another, I think the better off we are as a society. So I will support the bill. And any other comments or questions that other members would like to make? Senator Corbett?
I'd be glad to move the bill, Madam Chair.
All right, Mr. Leno, you may close.
It will just take me a moment or two. I again want to thank you not only for your beautiful comments, but also for the opportunity for this debate to be held so thoroughly. I do just want to touch on a number of points. With regard to the vague language concern, I didn't hear any suggested alternatives to make it less vague. I'm open to any suggestions anyone wants to make. I also just want to clarify that the long list of bills that Mr. Ben Lopez mentioned, which were anti-discriminatory bills and anti-bullying bills per his description, he and his organization opposed every one of those at the time they came forward, just in case anyone was confused that he had actually supported them. And then also, as you pointed out, Madam Chair, the concerns that we've heard today are very much the same concerns and from the same voices who were very upset and very fearful of the very notion of women's studies a few decades ago, because it was going to create change that we all believed was necessary, and it upset the order of things. The same voices, same concerns when there was discussion of black studies, African American studies, Native American studies, Mexican American studies. The same voices, the same concerns. Also, I want to reiterate, this has no cost to the state. The reprinting of the books will only happen when other changes are going to be made through the normal process, and we heard this in education last week, and the chair acknowledged that. And I also want to point out just one more bit of tragic irony. I, along with you, Madam Chair, want to congratulate the transgender woman who testified in the joy of her marriage. But the tragic irony is that everyone she sat with at this table opposing this bill also opposed our successful efforts to provide legal protections from discrimination in housing and employment for her as a transgendered woman. I heard one gentleman say that one of the proponent witnesses said she was the mother of a son who she feared was going to be a straight white male. That's not what my memory tells me. What she said was she has a son she believes to be a straight white male. What she feared was that without this educational opportunity, he might become one of the perpetrators, one of the bullies. That's what she feared. Heard the comment that bullying should be addressed one-on-one, that students should go to their teachers. I find that to be a cruel and insensitive comment. And that's because Michael Joseph Berry went to his authorities at school to complain about the unbearable harassment he was experiencing, as did Lawrence King, an effeminate 12-year-old boy who was shot dead in his classroom by a fellow classmate in the county of Santa Barbara, as did Seth Walsh, who lives in Senator Fuller's district, before he hung himself from the apple tree in his parents' backyard. Went to the authorities, went to the teacher, went to the adults in their schools, and nothing saved their lives. No actions were taken. There's concern that this bill will censor history. We are currently censoring history. This bill will correct that. And if you look at the bill, you see that we currently include in our studies the role and contributions of Native Americans, African Americans, Mexican Americans, Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, including European Americans. That's already in our statute, including them as well. And then the comment was that this bill is not about bullying. And again, I would just ask whoever made that comment to speak with Lisa Ford Berry or any other of the parents whose sons experienced such extreme bullying they could not bear to live with themselves any longer and took their own lives. This is indeed a bill about bullying. And then I'll just conclude that this question of whether this is about a political agenda, let me own up to it. This is about a political agenda that promotes respect and dignity and validation for all human life. and an agenda which promotes loving thy neighbor as thyself, and an agenda which promotes treating others as you would have others treat you. That is what this agenda is about. And I thank you. Request your aye vote.
Thank you very much. All right, we have a motion on the floor. Call the roll.
The motion is to pass to the Senate floor. Evans?
Aye.
Evans, aye. Harmon?
No.
Harmon, no. Blakesley? Corbett?
Aye.
Corbett, aye. Leno?
Aye.
Leno, aye.
Okay, 3-1, and we will place the bill and call for the absent member. Thank you very much, and thank you to everybody that participated in the debate. Members of the committee, we have one more bill, happens to be mine. It is item number 4, SB 299 on your agenda, and I will turn the gavel over to our Vice Chair, Mr. Harmon, while I present the bill. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, members. SB 299 is a measure to ensure that women do not lose their health insurance coverage while they are on maternity leave. It addresses what is basically a gap in the law pertaining to women who are on maternity leave. Unfortunately, state law does not require that their employers continue their health insurance coverage while they were on maternity leave. Although current law guarantees women the right of up to 4 months of unpaid leave through the California Pregnancy Disability Leave Act. This will affect many women in our state's workforce. Currently, 3/4 of women entering today's workforce will become pregnant at least once while they are employed. So again, it seeks to close the gap in health insurance for women who are on maternity leave and would bring state law in line with health coverage provisions of related state and federal family and medical leave laws. And I would ask for your aye vote. I have Beth McGovern from the Commission on the Status of Women and Manali Sheath from the Equal Rights Advocates to testify on behalf of the bill.
All right, which one of you ladies wants to go first?
I'll go first.
All right.
My name's Manali Sheth, and I'm a staff attorney at Equal Rights Advocates, also known as ERA. ERA is a nonprofit legal organization that was founded in 1974. It's based in San Francisco, and it was founded to advocate on behalf of women and girls seeking equality in education and the workplace. We have successfully done so through impact litigation, advocacy, public education, and the free advice and counseling of women nationwide. ERA is co-sponsoring SB 299 along with the California Commission on the Status of Women. We'd like to thank the committee for presenting us with this opportunity to testify regarding the bill. California's Pregnancy Disability Leave Act, also known as the PDL, guarantees workers unpaid job-protected leave of up to 4 months for a pregnancy-related condition. While the PDL provides greater rights to new and expectant mothers than other leave laws, it falls short of these other leave laws in one critical respect, and that's health insurance coverage. SB 299 would cure this shortfall. Other federal and state leave laws require employers to continue health care for employees on leave. For instance, individuals covered under the Federal Family and Medical Leave Act have a right to the continuation of group health insurance coverage. However, the FEMLA has strict eligibility requirements, and only approximately 50% of the workforce is included. Those covered under the California Family Rights Act, also known as CFRA, are also guaranteed the continuation of health benefits during leave, but CFRA excludes leave for pregnancy-related conditions. Contrary to these laws, continued health care coverage is not required by the PDL currently. The gap in health care coverage under the PDL discourages and prevents women who are not covered by other leave laws from taking pregnancy leave despite their health needs and the needs of their baby. SB 299 will amend the PDL to guarantee the continuation of employer health insurance coverage for women on pregnancy disability leave so that they are no longer forced to confront the Hobson's choice of staying at work while disabled or taking leave without health insurance. When forced to pay out-of-pocket costs for health insurance, many women will delay or cut short their leave despite well-documented benefits to mother and child. Because ERA has an advice and counseling hotline, we've been able to track the adverse impact that the lack of maternity coverage assurance has had on workers on leave under the PDL. For instance, we recently received a call on our hotline about a working woman in the Bay Area who was disabled by pregnancy and struggled after taking pregnancy disability leave because her employer refused to provide her health insurance coverage during this time. She had a high-risk pregnancy, but she didn't qualify for FEMLA leave because she hadn't worked at the job for a year or for a minimum of 1,250 hours yet. At this time, the woman's health care coverage was cut, and her family was living paycheck to paycheck. And they were all covered under her employer-sponsored health insurance plan because her husband worked freelance and without benefits. We called her employer and urged them to reconsider their decision to deny her health care coverage during her pregnancy disability leave, but they refused. Her employer took the position that they were not legally obligated to provide her health benefits during this time, and accordingly, the woman faced tremendous hardship in attending to her high-risk pregnancy on the one hand, and on the other hand, stressing out about the out-of-pocket costs that she would have to incur to get alternative health insurance coverage for herself and her new baby when they needed it the most. SB 299 would provide the legislative fix that is desperately needed to help this woman and the many other women who find themselves in the precarious position of being on pregnancy disability leave and dealing with the added stress of having to finance the high cost of health insurance at this very critical time. We strongly urge the committee to vote aye on the bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Beth McGovern with the California Commission on the Status of Women. We are very pleased to be co-sponsoring this bill along with equal rights advocates. Currently, pregnant women can be faced with a really untenable choice between taking leave from work or maintaining their health care coverage. They can be forced to choose between two things that are both essential to the health and well-being of their babies and themselves. When a woman is pregnant or has just given birth, really does seem like the worst time to be without health insurance and access to medical care. Regular prenatal care is associated with better birth outcomes. It's linked to healthy maternal weight and greater birth weights for newborns. Preterm and low birth weight babies are at an increased risk for a number of things, including impaired neurological and cognitive functioning and poor educational success in the future. So low birth weight can have significant and long-term negative effects. Additionally, the cost associated with low birth weight and premature birth is enormous. There are increased hospital costs and ongoing medical, educational, and other services associated with these babies. Health insurance coverage is critical to ensuring positive health outcomes for mothers and infants. Lack of prenatal care can lead to a host of pregnancy complications and delayed diagnosis of treatable conditions. So regular and continuing prenatal care that monitors the progress of the pregnancy helps identify potential problems before they become serious and when they can be more easily remedied. And also, leave from work for pregnancy-related conditions is essential to healthy outcomes for women and their babies. Women who experience complications during pregnancy, of course, need to be able to take leave from work, but even women with uncomplicated pregnancies experience health benefits when they are able to take time off from work. Recent UC Berkeley studies have found that maternity leave both before and after birth is better for the health of both the mothers and their infants. One study found that women who worked right up until the time of delivery were significantly more likely to end up having C-sections, which can lead to complications and longer recovery time for the mother. C-sections are also very costly due to longer hospital stays and additional medical treatment. Failure to take leave before birth has also been linked to preterm delivery, low birth weight, and infant mortality. Another UC Berkeley study showed that women who returned to work more quickly after giving birth were less likely to breastfeed, and breastfeeding has lots of important health benefits for babies, including decreased risks of allergies, infections, obesity, and even sudden infant death syndrome. So for many reasons, it's extremely important for pregnant women and new mothers to have access to both leave from work and continued health care coverage. Women should not have to face the dilemma of choosing one or the other. We need to make sure health coverage is continued for women who are on pregnancy leave. We think that SB 299 is a very reasonable fix that would essentially conform the state's PDL law to other federal and state leave laws. We respectfully urge your aye vote.
Thank you very much. Are there witnesses in support? All right, why don't we start over here, and we'll just come right down the line if we can do that.
Yes, sir, Mr.
And now we've had two rather lengthy statements by supporters, so we want to keep the remaining support statements brief.
Yes, sir. Beth Capel on behalf of Health Access California. We're in support of this measure. We think that mothers should have health insurance when they're on pregnancy leave.
Thank you very much, and that was short. We appreciate it. Next speaker.
Angela Blanchard on behalf of the California Nurse Midwives Association in strong support.
Thank you.
Allison Ramey on behalf of the California Primary Care Association, representing more than 800 nonprofit community clinics and health centers in support.
Thank you.
Kelly Green with the California Nurses Association in strong support.
Thank you.
Mossberg, California Family Health Council in support.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Stephanie Nidzeu with Planned Parenthood Affiliates of California, also in strong support.
Okay.
Vanessa Hina with the Western Center on Law and Poverty in support.
Thank you.
Teresa Stark with the California Medical Association in support.
Okay.
Mitch Seaman with the California Labor Federation in strong support.
Thank you very much. Any further witnesses in support? Doesn't look like it. Are there witnesses in opposition that would like to say something? Seeing none, are there any questions from members of the committee? Senator?
I'm sorry, I'm going to violate a rule. I won't ask a question. I'm just going to make a quick comment. I hope you'll oblige me, Senator
Absolutely.
Harmon. Thank God, Senator Evans, Madam Chair, that you did have the opportunity to be enlightened through your educational career and understand that it was important to be an advocate and eventually end up here in the halls of the legislature. I thank you for bringing this legislation. It is so common sense. Why would we not make sure that women during their pregnancy have the ability to continue with their health care? It's probably one of the best things we can be doing for the future of people in the state of California and our children. So thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here as a woman advocate.
Thank you.
Senator Leno?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also am appreciative of Senator Evans' introduction of this bill, and I know my office communicated after the fact of your introduction, but I'm pleased to be joining you as a co-author. I'm reminded of an interview I happened to see, don't ask me how, of Governor Haley Barbour from Mississippi, who took great pride in the fact that, I don't know if this is true, but he said it was, that Mississippi has the lowest abortion rates of any state in the country. What he didn't mention is that Mississippi also has the highest infant mortality rates among all states in the country, and that's because there is minimal, if any, pre- or postnatal care in Mississippi. So the question of this bill, I think, asked of us is, do we value the health and medical care of mothers? And if so, how do we manifest that value? And I think this bill is an opportunity for us to do so. And I would move the bill.
Thank you.
Senator Evans, we haven't heard any opposition today, but maybe I could ask you if you have had discussions with opponents or others on the bill. And particularly, I was wondering, is the opposition, if there is any, is it their concern that the employee, woman that's pregnant and leaves and then doesn't come back, and so they wind up having to pay 4 months of medical care for an employee that doesn't come back to their employment?
Well, we haven't
Is that a concern?
We haven't received any opposition to the bill, and some very minor concerns that were raised. To me, that was not among them. But to answer the question, first of all, the bill closes a very small but very significant gap. It's very significant if you are a woman, pregnant woman, on pregnant disability leave and you lose your coverage. It doesn't add any additional layer of coverage. It doesn't give any new rights. If the employer is paying for the coverage before the disability leave, then the employer would pay for it after. If the employment ends, then the coverage ends. I mean, it's just like any other coverage that goes with employment. That's what happens. Perhaps the...
Mr. Chair, I believe the bill also has a provision that if the employee does not return to work after these premiums having been paid, and the reason for her not returning is beyond her control, health reasons or otherwise, that she must reimburse the employer for those premiums during those months.
Right. There's no cost to no additional cost to the employer.
Okay. All right. Did you want to add one more comment? We'll kind of break the rules here for a moment and let you do it.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify. It's not so much that the worker must reimburse the premiums, but it's rather that the employer is entitled to seek reimbursement of the premiums.
Oh, okay.
And the language that we used is the same language that's used in CFRA and FEMLA. So it's just, it comports with the existing law. There's nothing added.
Right. There's no new rights created
All right.
that aren't inconsistent with existing law.
Any further questions or comments? Would you like to close, Senator?
Ask for an aye vote.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion on the bill? Motion by Senator Leno. Do pass to appropriations. Thank you very much. Secretary, call roll.
The motion is due pass to Senate Appropriations. Evans?
Aye.
Evans, aye. Harmon?
No.
Harmon, no. Blakesley? Blakesley, aye. Corbett? Aye. Corbett, aye. Leno? Leno, aye. On your bill.
The vote on that bill was 4-1, so the bill is out. Thank you very much, Mr. Harmon. Members, we have two remaining items of business. First is the passage of the consent calendar. Have a motion?
I had a question about, we have two bills on the consent calendar.
Yes.
Number 3, SB 293. I know the author's not here, Senator Padilla, but I'm concerned if there were future amendments on the bill of significance that it would return to this committee. Is that the usual practice on consent bills? Oftentimes we talk to authors and that question's asked when they're here. So I'm asking if this bill is amended in a major way, would it be returned to this committee? And I would request that if that happens.
Yeah, Senator Harmon, if it's of concern to you, if the bill is significantly amended, what I can do is ask the Rules Committee to re-refer it to the Judiciary Committee.
Thank you.
So we'll keep an eye on the bill,
right,
and if something comes up,
I would move the consent calendar.
And just to finish that, if something comes up that concerns you in particular, please let me know, and I'll ask for that re-referral. So the motion is to move the consent calendar. Call the roll.
Evans?
Aye.
Evans, aye. Harmon? Harmon, aye. Blakesley? Blakesley, aye. Corbett? Aye. Corbett, aye. Leno? Leno, aye. 5-0.
Okay, and I would say that's true of any bill that goes through this committee on consent or otherwise. If it's significantly amended and any member of the committee has a concern, we can discuss it and see that it can get re-referred.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We like that policy.
Yes, we maintain jurisdiction as the bill goes through. Then, members, we have the vote-only calendar for the bills that we heard last week, but did not have a quorum of the committee to vote on. So those would be items 11, 12, 13, and 14 on your agenda. SB number 111, Senator Yee. And I can either entertain a motion on each individual bill, or we can entertain a motion on all of them as a whole.
I think we'd better take them individually.
All right. Do I have a motion on item number 11?
So moved.
Okay, the motion has been made. Call the roll.
The motion is due pass to the Senate floor. Evans?
Aye.
Evans, aye. Harmon? Harmon, no. Blakesley? Blakesley, no. Corbett?
Aye.
Corbett, aye. Leno? Leno, aye.
That bill is out. The vote was 3-2. Item number 12, do I have a motion?
So moved.
The motion has been made on SB number 129. Senator Leno, call the roll.
The motion is due pass to the Senate floor. Evans?
Aye.
Evans, aye. Harmon? No. Harmon, no. Blakesley? Blakesley, no. Corbett?
Aye.
Corbett, aye. Leno? Leno, aye.
The bill is out, 3-2. Item number 13. SB number 182, Senator Corbett with amendments. Do I have a motion on that bill? Mr. Leno has moved the bill. Call the roll.
The motion is due pass as amended to Senate Appropriations Committee. Evans?
Aye.
Evans, aye. Harmon? Harmon, no. Blakesley? Blakesley, no. Corbett?
Aye.
Corbett, aye. Leno? Leno, aye.
The vote is 3-2. That bill is out. Item number 14, again, SEA number 7 with amendments authored by Senator Yee. The bill has been moved. Call the roll.
The motion is due pass as amended to the Senate Elections Reapportionment and Constitutional Amendments Committee. Evans?
Aye.
Evans, aye. Harmon? Harmon, aye. Blakesley? Blakesley, aye. Corbett?
Aye.
Corbett, aye. Leno? Leno, aye.
5-0. That bill is out. Now we have a few bills on call. We will at this time lift the call on those bills. SB 48, Senator Leno. Call the absent member.
Blakesley? No. Blakesley, no.
That bill is out, 3-2. Item number 2, SB 117. Call the absent member.
Harmon? No. Harmon, no. Blakesley? No. Blakesley, no.
That bill is out, 3-2. SB 337. Call the absent member.
Harmon? No. Harmon, no.
That bill is out, 3-2. SB 484. Call the absent members.
Corbett? Aye. Corbett, aye.
That bill is out, 3-2. SB 561. Call the absent member.
Blakesley?
Aye.
Blakesley, aye.
That bill is out, 4-1. SB 684.
Harmon? No. Harmon, no. Blakesley? No. Blakesley, no.
That bill is out, 3-2. And I believe that's it. All right, members, thank you very much for everybody's cooperation. That concludes our business for today. We stand adjourned.